thank you so much for making the time to talk to me. I realize it's been since the quarantine, I think, was the last time we talked.
Yeah, I know. It's so nice. Well, thank you so much for just loving up the kids during I know you supported the book song challenge in the past and all the kids who had done I know you talked to Abigail and you know
Yeah, still following her. Still
she-
love everything that she does.
she's such a sweetheart. Her family's amazing. So I was just grateful that you just took a moment to notice what the kids were doing and I appreciated that so much.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I really love what your books are all about. And so this is your new one, right? Tell me about the new one.
The new one is Way Past Mean. So, and it's really fun. It really just helps kids question how they could find mean intriguing.
Yeah.
I try to just make sure kids are honored when they feel things that they don't want to feel or that they're told they shouldn't feel, but how in the beginning of the book, mean feels intriguing to this little girl named Ruby. And
Yeah.
um, it seems I describe it in the book like that it's like a roller coaster that she can't get off of at first. And it has all these ups and downs. And, when she finally sees the impact of how it's making the new girl Nellie feel, like it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think the piece of the book that I'm most excited and most proud of is when the girls go to make up with Nellie that Nellie says, well, yeah, I want to be friends too, but I want friends that treat me nice, So just making sure that it's not the perfect bow and that there's forgiveness, but also a moment of a child who knows what she needs and wants in a friend speaking up.
Yeah, it's great. And it's great to show that there can be resolution, even if you are mean, even, on either end of that meanness, you can find some resolution to it. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. So yeah, it's really fun for me just to be honest and authentic with kids and place kids in everyday situations so that, they can see what's real, what's really actually happening in their world, what's a day-to-day common moment where they could have to figure out how to manage their feelings.
So let's talk about the whole series. Did you intend for it to be a series when you started?
I had ideas for other books, but usually, oftentimes, when you're working on picture books, you will, even if your mind's 10 steps ahead, you'll send in one and you'll start there. Same with series work in general. But so yeah, I had sent in Way Past Mad was the first book in the series, and I was so excited about that one. And I started brainstorming all other titles after that one, before and after that one came out. And my publisher called me and said, hey, what do you think about doing another one? I'm like, oh, that's great. I've got this whole big list. Let's talk about it. So yeah, so that's when Way Past Worried came into play.
And so what is the process of tell me how you make a picture book. You've worked with a few different illustrators, right?
Yes.
But they all have a similar look.
Well, because for this series, that was really observant of you, Melissa. Well, I had worked with a different illustrator on my first book, My Quiet Ship. So that was standalone. And
Yeah.
then on another book, The Strongest Thing. So that was Sonia Sanchez and Rhea Zaid for those two books.
Mhm.
This book, it really was Sandra, for this series, the Great Big Feeling series, it really was Sandra de la Prata that set the tone. She did Way Past Mad and Way Past Worried, the first two books in the series. And sometimes, in this case, Sandra wasn't available for the next books on the timeline the publisher wanted to have the book out because they
Mhm.
were getting the books out pretty quickly. So they hired what's called a copy artist.
Hmm.
Also a phenomenal, I mean, obviously everybody who's followed since have been phenomenal illustrators. Um, so Karen Wall was the next illustrator of Way Past. Um, I'm trying to think what came next. It was Way Past Sad and Way Past Jealous next. She did Way Past Afraid, Way Past Lonely. And then Josette Maria Julie, he did Way Past Embarrassed and Way Past Sorry. And now we're back to working with Karen Wall for Way Past Mean. I think I
Wow.
did I don't know what I missed in the mix, but I missed it. But bottom line is, they hired a copy artist who respects and honors the tradition of Sandra de la Prada's work.
And what is the process? Do you write the manuscript and you give it to the illustrator? Do you like, how do you map it all out? What's going to be on what page? Walk me
Yeah.
through that.
So, well, I write a manuscript, which is really just either pen and paper or I'm just typing and I'm just literally sitting there mentally playing through what's happening next for like I'm envisioning these characters and I'm kind of mentally bringing them to life and putting them on paper. And then from there, after I feel like the manuscript's good, after I drive myself crazy and change like words, change punctuation, change where I'm spacing things, I will lay the book out almost like I actually have something like kind of like on paper like this. I'll cut
Oh,
out
wow.
the manuscript and I'll paste it there. I should have put it right next to me, but um I paste it out and that helps me kind of whittle down words, see how the page is going to turn, make sure it's feeling the right way. And then I'll put it all back onto a piece of paper because I don't want to overstep myself or for the illustrator. I don't want them to think that I'm dictating where the pages should turn or that kind of thing. But I really do have a pretty clear vision by the
Mhm.
time I hand off the manuscript to, I send the manuscript into my editor. I work with Albert Whitman Publishers, and
Mhm.
I started with Wendy McClure as an editor for the series, and now I work with Sue Tarski. So Sue's my editor. Sue will then go to Rick, who's the art director, and they'll have a conversation themselves before then sending the manuscript off to one of the illustrators. And then from there, the next time I'll see the manuscript back, well, actually, prior to them sending it, I'll go through any type of text revisions that I need to go through with Sue. We'll talk about like if she didn't understand something, or if a character's name needs to be switched for any kind of reason, or, we'll just go back and forth a little bit. But typically, it's really a lovely process to work with Sue. And then from there, the next time I'll see the manuscript is when we have the first set of sketches.
Oh, okay.
And
So
when
do you dictate, I mean, there's a child on each cover, right? Do you sort of have a say in what that child even looks like?
I try to be really respectful of the
Okay.
illustrator. So there are definitely times where I see our sketches and I see things where I'll speak up if it's something that's totally different or if it's something that doesn't match, like if a character, because we've used different copy artists, if a character was mentioned in another book, because that's what I love
Hmm.
to do. I love to bring the characters back through the
Yeah.
different
It's a
books.
whole world that you've
Yeah,
created. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that we're in this town, we're with these kids. It's like,
Yeah.
it's hopefully a really warm feeling. But I will
Hmm.
point out if a character looks much different than they did in another book, or, if they were in another
Yeah.
book and maybe the illustrator didn't realize it, I'll point that out. And I will also I will raise, pieces if I think like, I don't know, I think on a dog bowl one time, the dog's name was like axe and it was spelled in a different way and it was turned a different way. And I was like, if we're also thinking that our kids are going to read the words, let's make sure that like if they're at the
Uh,
dog bowl, it's gonna, kind of like the ed teacher background in me of
right.
making sure that every single piece of this for kids is considered, that we have diversity in the book, that we have like just a warmth in the book, that there is
Well,
variety
let's talk
in the
about
book.
your background in education because you are actually Dr. Edelman.
I am. My mom's
See,
going to be
if I
so
was a
excited.
PhD, I would make everybody call me Dr. Jacobs. Like, you're so subtle about it. I would be like, that's Dr. Jacobs to you. You earned that PhD. It's so fabulous. So tell me a little bit about your background in education.
Yeah, that's really nice. Like I said, my mom's going to be very happy because she's always like telling people that, oh, when you're getting an invitation, how come it doesn't say Dr. and Mr. Edelman? She's all like
Yes,
constantly proud.
absolutely. And you got your PhD while you were working, right?
I did. I got my doctorate. I got it from Drexel. So yay, Philly.
Yep. Yep.
Um, And yeah, I started as an elementary school teacher, right out of college, and just love the blessing of teaching kids. And then got my master's at Beaver, which is now Arcadia,
Yeah.
in education technology, and that kind of positioned me to push that ed tech space. So I really
Mhm.
started studying more ed tech at Drexel. So I got
So what
my
does that mean,
doctorate,
ed tech, if people don't know?
like how to basically use all sorts of technology to support learners. Um,
Hmm.
it's not necessarily just a random add-on, but it's kind of just woven through naturally. Back when I got my doctorate, it was, I think, 2003 or 2004. So it was a really long time ago when people weren't necessarily using tech in the same way they are now. Like now it's, just so in our space all the time. And back then,
Hmm.
really, people were sometimes forcing the use of technology in education.
Mm.
So it's how to kind of weave it through. I worked with discussion forums and tried to help kids, feel a little bit more faceless when they were getting feedback for their writing so that they can empower their writing and then empower themselves to kind of reveal themselves as writers. So yeah, I did work very hard on it. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to have the degree in ed leadership and learning technologies. And yeah, I have since applied it to my work.
Yeah. So how do you bring that? Because the mission of your books, right? It's educational, but like I think of it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, about educating kids about their social and emotional well-being. It's not educational like ABC 1, 2, 3. It's really about their inner lives. Am I right
Yeah.
about that?
100%. And I wonder, like, it's funny, I studied one of my majors in undergrad was psychology. So I wonder if that's just like a random, how you go through life and every single little thing you do just informs the next piece of your work. But I
Yeah.
also think it was just what I saw as a teacher. I taught for many years elementary, and then I taught as a professor at Drexel for people who wanted to become teachers. And I think I just saw that that was the missing piece for a lot of students, or that was something that was holding kids back in a certain way. Not everybody's good at soccer, not everybody's good at mathematics, but people can become really good at figuring out how to relate to one another, and that's a
Mhm.
serious superpower. So when I'm noticing when kids can manage their feelings, when they can empower themselves from the inside out, then that's really where you see kids thriving, adults thriving. That's, how success can start to be defined.
Yeah. And I think it's great that there's such a dialogue these days about kids' mental health and emotional health. Certainly was not the case when I was growing up. But it's also great that we can read these books with kids. And I showed your website. Your website is so dynamic. It's just amazing. And so I was showing it to some of the kids in my life, and they were like, which one do I start with? So which one do people start with?
Well, that's what I like. I mean, I guess when I was younger, like, I liked those choose your own adventure books where you're presented with opportunity and you have to decide what is possible. What is your path?
Mhm.
And I love
Mhm.
that. I don't want to dictate to kids how to solve an issue. I don't want the work or anything I do to be something that's imposing. Instead, I like to just offer suggestions. I like to offer characters. I like to offer ideas and things that,
Yeah.
everybody else is kind of experiencing or going through, and you take from it what you want. Because I really believe like the most unique and amazing thing in this world is our individuality, right? So how can we just harness all of our power by picking and choosing for ourselves, by taking the bits from our mentors and from the books that we love and from the films that we watch? How can we take those to create conversations, forge a path, and just keep getting stronger?
Yeah, and you provide a lot of materials also with the different books so that whatever book you pick, there's stuff on your website or whatever, so that if we're reading these books, if the kids are reading them by themselves, fantastic. But if we're reading the books with them, that it can create that ongoing conversation about whatever the emotions are. And you have a bunch, I mean, you don't just have a book launch, you have like an event. So you have a bunch of materials. I know you have a great relationship with Children's World in Haverford, Children's Book World in Haverford. So tell me about some of the other pieces to the books that you have created.
Oh my God, that is so much fun to talk about. Nobody really asked me about it, and I'm so excited. I mean, that is for me, there's always the book, but like, you're as a parent, you think about, and as a former teacher, you think about, well, then what? Right? You're going to
Yeah.
read together, but then what? So hopefully, like, if you're with your child, you'll also have a hug. Or if you're with your child, you'll also have a conversation, like in Way Past Embarrassed, the little boy's struggling about like feeling embarrassed that doesn't feel like he's as good as everybody else in math class, right? So hopefully you'll have a conversation. And in the classroom, like digging into that work so kids have more space to kind of self-reflect and shift from a reader who's somehow like, hopefully not too distant from the main character to somebody who can start practicing what they're going to do on their own. Like with Way Past Mad, we made mad cakes. Like, how do you get your mad out in lots of other ways? And you're like mashing up a couple of ingredients to make these like pancakes, but like just talking about getting your feelings out through motion. And we did dance parties with our own kind of song. And with Way Past Mean, we're playing around with Nellie's chicken shirt. Like, Nellie has this chicken shirt that everybody's like making fun of, which I love her chicken shirt personally. So we're talking about like, how can you make a me tea? Like, what's on your me tea? What reflects you that you shouldn't be embarrassed of, even if someone's pointing or laughing or, whatever. I mean, I have videos on the website about like different writing techniques. I use
Yeah.
something I call cup stacking, where it's like, you build this cup tower and it's destined to fall over. And it's kind of like the same as building a story. You want to heighten the emotion and then let it fall down. And then it's also reflects a character arc. Like once everything
Yeah.
crashes, what do you have to do? You have to build it back. But if you do it the exact same way, what's going to happen? Like it's going to fall back the exact same way. And that's not what we want for our characters. So how can you bring them back in a way that's slightly different after they've learned a certain lesson? So for me, the website has, anything from cooking activities to we have star shades you can cut out and be the star you are, like empowering classroom activities. We also have printable cards that if you want to play a game like where you're just matching different emotions. We have mixed emotion cards because, it's not having feelings isn't always just like, it's not just like I'm sad. Sometimes you're sad and you're angry at the same time, like in Way Past Sad
Yeah.
and this little boy's friends
That's what
movie.
one of the kids that I showed the website to, they were like, well, I'm lonely and I'm sad and I'm mad and all of these things at once. So I was like, well, that's why it's series. You can read one at a time.
Yeah, it's complicated sometimes.
Right. Right. Sometimes you're all of those in an hour. Sometimes you're all of those in a month. It depends. Maybe you should write these for grownups too, Hallee.
Yeah, I think subtly. It's funny because grownups do reach out to me and they're like, oh, I needed that one today. I'm like,
Yes. Yes.
Yes.